Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum. I'm doing a hostile takeover today so that we can interview Angel about her new book, which I'm very excited to talk about. Excited to do the interview, honored to be here hosting.
Aw.
I'm on the channel all the time. I'm always bothering you guys, but this is my first time hosting.
Bothering? What?
You look very evil with your cat in your lap.
Yeah. We did a hostile takeover.
You can't see, but off camera, we are actually surrounded by hostile cats.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
They're
That's
pawing
an
at us off
army.
screen.
That's right. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, first of all, congratulations. It is release day. We're having the live on release day.
Yeah.
Um, how are you feeling? You
Uh,
excited?
I have I have no idea. You asked me, you were like, "Oh, like, are you excited?" And I said, "Yes, question mark, no question mark, maybe, probably." And you were like, "Those are all good things."
All the feelings.
Yeah, I was saying this. I think I've said this to numerous people. I did the collection and Mrs. Claus last year, and those are my two first, by myself projects, as far as just featuring my work, away from anthologies. And I don't know why, but this one felt way more like anxiety as far as like getting it out. Like, I don't know. I think it's part of it's because it's like the weirdest thing I've ever done writing wise. And so there's a very big fear that like it's not going to be, successful, that people won't like it. And I think I've this feels like a bigger release for some reason. I'm not really sure why, but
I'm really glad that you brought that up because it was something we were talking about in private. I was just gonna
Mhm.
spring it on you. I was just like, I'm bringing our private chat to the live. No, but I was wondering if you had any kind of explanation as to maybe why this feels a little bit bigger because it is your third solo release and Voices has experience publishing anthologies before that. So
Yeah.
it's not like you're coming into this with no experience. Like you definitely have your toes in that shark
Yeah.
infested cult pond. So
Yeah. I don't know. The only thing I can come up with is I think it may be a combination of at least two things. One, because it's very, for me, weird. Like, you've read stuff, you know where my ideas come from. Steve's read some stuff. He knows where some of my ideas from. Tasha, who's in the chat, also same thing. And so this is not like anything I've done. And so I've really been trying to push my limits. I did that with a couple of things in the collection I did, all the little voices, but this is like a full scale story, and it's very, I feel like it's very sci-fi horror in some aspects, or in quite a few aspects. And I think that that's scary because I think sci-fi is super fun, and people can be very kind to it when it's silly and over the top, and but also not so kind if it's not, like right on the money. And so it's nerve-wracking because it's so different. And I think the other thing is like three individual projects in, I'm hoping that this is going to get some traction. I did, all the little voices did relatively well, I think, for given my very first like solo thing by itself. Mrs. Claus, if I'm honest, did not do as well as I assumed it would, given it's werewolves at Christmas. Get on it. It also features myself, Kat, and Tasha, and so I think with this one, I'm really hoping that this is going to take it to the next level. And I think, just being a little transparent here, I think some of that falls into the worrying about the success of future projects just under the Voices umbrella in general. I want something to get attention on things that come from me, whether it's my stories, other people's stories, and I just want it to grow. And I'm putting a lot of pressure on it, in short. And so it's giving me anxiety. I'm doing it to myself.
A lot of it self-sabotage pressure.
Yes.
Speaking
that's
of Tasha, inquiring minds want to know, did Sky Sharks inspire this in any way?
And that's going to be a separate book just for you, Tasha. Sky Sharks, from my point of view. No. Actually, the only like mainstream inspiration that you probably could guess if you've read this already, is Deep Blue Sea. There's a couple of very specific moments in this that are very Deep Blue Sea, which was intentional because I love that movie. But no Sky Sharks, not yet, Tasha. One day we'll do I'll do something with Sky Sharks.
Uh, that actually brings me into I had kind of a checklist. I'm immediately going to ignore it, and just follow the flow of the conversation because it was something I wanted to ask about. You
Yeah,
talked about sci-fi
yeah,
and it being very, um welcoming in some respects,
yeah.
but it can also be like, not to make the anxiety worse, but it can be like very harsh. Like it
I gotta
has,
go.
I've sci-fi fans I feel are some of the
Yeah,
nitpickiest fans,
yeah,
like genre wise.
yeah,
So, but I think you've done something really interesting here, where it's very high concept, like some of these sillier shark
yeah,
things, but it's a more serious tone.
yeah,
Was balancing out that tone something that you were worried about while you were writing the book? Like, did you put a lot of thought into
yeah. Yeah, so the person that read it first that was giving me the feedback literally as it was being written is Chris, for The Love of Horror. He's been on the show numerous times. He's a friend of the channel. Most people know who he is by now. But I was like, we went. I actually got to meet Chris and his partner and their new baby, and we all met at the aquarium here in Atlanta. And it was like I was like posting hammerhead pictures of sharks and stuff. The when we were there, but it was one of these things where we were talking about it in concept. And so I began to send him and Marcy, his partner, chapters as I was writing them. So they got like 3 chapters at a time, sometimes 2, just depending. And I was getting constant feedback on it. And that was one of the reasons I kind of wanted something set up because I don't know how, I'm new to this world. I don't know how beta reading typically works, but I wanted the feedback at a smaller scale. I didn't want to send this entire story to somebody and then get all this stuff to then have to try to go back and fix, but it was, or adjust, or however you want to word it. But he was giving me constant feedback about emotional and like kind of balancing those things. And I worried about it constantly. There's very specific scenes that got rewritten a bunch of times because it is a silly concept. And some of the visuals are, depending on the frame of mind you're in, may look in your head very silly. And then sometimes they may be very scary. I think it just depends on my mindset. Cause there were days where I was like, Meg looks ridiculous today. But then there were other days where I was like, if I met Meg, I would just kill myself because there's no way I could go up against someone who looks that way. Right. And so I did worry about it, but I didn't know how to pay attention to it while I'm writing it, if that makes sense. Like I really just tried my best. I really just was like, well, these are the things I want to do. And then, and Kat, you specifically know this. And I think Tasha does too, because we talked about it. Because for those of you who don't know, Tasha edited and Kat formatted. So they've both read it in its rough versions of itself. And so I, there was one emotional thing in particular that I actually didn't intend to happen. And then I decided super late in the story to kind of switch gears with. And so those things, they felt natural when I was writing them. And when I reread them, sometimes they didn't. And so it's something I worry about even now. I hope that the balance is there for people because it is definitely not necessarily meant to be a silly book. It's definitely meant to be more serious. There's some commentary things in there as well. And I don't know. I don't know if I did a good job. I tried my best.
No, I think
Oh,
it's a really
yeah.
interesting balance that you found because a lot of high concept things that I've read at least do lean toward more silly. And I think you did a
Yes.
really good job keeping it grounded and,
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you.
more
Yeah.
solidly in the horror genre than,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
Speaking of your process though, this is something where we
no
differ,
process.
and I I was like really shocked to find out because usually I beta read for you.
Yeah.
This was the first one I kind of requested that because you had some questions about like whether or not plot points landed. I am a very immersive reader, so plot
Yes.
points always land better for me if I can sit down and read the whole thing in a sitting.
Yep.
I decided not to beta read as it was going for that reason.
Yep.
Um, was it I is it overwhelming at all to be getting feedback as the project is going? Like, did that have any influence on the direction that the story went? Because you did end up making some surprise shifts. Was that just where the characters were going, or was that kind of a response to the comments you were getting?
Yeah, I think maybe a combination of two things. I think a lot of writers say, sometimes they aren't the ones writing the stories, the characters are. I think a lot of us feel that way. Oh my God, us. That's weird to say. Anyway, and but the other side of that is kind of going back to Chris giving me feedback as he's reading through these chapters. He would mention things, and I not trying to give too much away, but there's certain characters, like specifically the little girl Abba that you meet pretty early on. I think you meet her in chapter 2, where he was talking about like the way things were hitting, and I think that getting that as I was going helped me feel more confident in leaning into those things as I was writing. I think the only time I felt maybe, and it wasn't really overwhelmed, but there was a point after like once things really like once shit really starts to hit the fan and stuff really starts going in various directions. There was Chris had sent me, I think it was after like the chapter 7, the frenzy chapter. Like he sent me like a list of questions because there were things, and I've mentioned this before, I'm really bad about this. I know things in my head as the storyteller. I forget that my audience does not. And so there were things he was asking me about that I was like, fuck, like how far back into this do I have to go? I've got to make sure that I'm going back, and this stuff has to make sense, because if this part doesn't make sense, then the rest of it's not going to have the punch that I want it to. And it was specifically about some of the character interactions with 34. It was things like Abba's father and like the way that he interacted with her. It was just these very like nuanced things that you're not supposed to really understand in the beginning, but if you don't have any sort of connection, then as things go on and you do get more information, it's just going to be a total misfire. And so I did have to go back and reevaluate how to answer those questions earlier on without giving too much away, and that was difficult because by that point I was almost finished writing it. I only had like a few chapters left. And then I was worried if going back, I worry about breaking up the flow of when I'm writing something and going back and changing it and it messing it up or ruining what I already had that was working. And so that was really the only time, because I think after that, I think it was like 4 or 5 questions of things that like weren't adding up for him as he was reading. And I had to be like, okay, that's a big deal. Like I've got to go back and like tweak these things to make them make sense. And because I totally understood where he was coming from. He was right, because it was all stuff that was in my head. I knew it. I needed to make sure you guys knew it. And so I had to go back. That was really the only time I felt like the pressure of changes. And I wanted to give a light to Tasha to this too, because Tasha was like back in the day when we first met a couple years ago. She looked at a couple of like reviews for me, because at that time I was not trying to be a writer. And so I'd given up on that a long time ago. And so she said to me with this story, I think in particular, Tasha, correct me if I'm wrong, that I'm way more open to feedback than I used to be, because I used to be like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And so, but I've learned that I think I've gotten to a place where I know the people I'm working with, I trust. And so that made getting that feedback, while it was a little like, oh shit, this is a lot of stuff I got to fix, it was a comforting thing that it was coming from a place of love and care, if that makes sense. And I think that made it feel less overwhelming. That was a very long-winded way to answer that, but that's how I do
No,
everything. So
Oh.
it's good. I do want to just highlight one thing, and then I'll go back to the checklist and like things I wanted to start with. But
Tasha says you are correct.
oh yes.
just
But just
for
to go back to, sorry, not to cut you
oh,
off.
Go ahead.
Just Tasha's just confirming that this is, as the editor, this is a very different thing from what you've written before.
Yeah.
and just to highlight that for anyone that missed it or anyone that's not a writer, Angel does her stories as a single draft and then edits that draft. There's no like second drafting process, which is just insane to me. Like it is so that's you were talking about being worried about like breaking up flow, and it's like that's insane that you're just like edit that one draft. That's so like it's efficient, but it's like it gives me anxiety. That's
I can't go through it the way you do. I'll never put anything out. I'm just like, this is what I got. I can't do the rewrites and stuff like you do. It's crazy. I don't
A
know.
lot goes into it, right? It's, so I think even just getting through one draft is just like,
Yes.
like you're saying, like we take things we personalize so much, especially when it comes to feedback, right? So you're really putting your heart and soul onto the page,
Yeah.
you know.
No.
So cycling back around to like introductory questions that I just skipped right over. How would you describe this to someone? That's one of the craziest parts about this because it is very out there. It's out of your
Yeah.
comfort zone. It's not like anything. I've seen movies that I could compare this to, but I haven't like read a book like this. What? How would you describe this? What's your for someone that doesn't know what the hell we're talking about 15 minutes in the interview.
Sure. I have no idea. You know what I think, and I make these references, one in particular where I just straight up say this, but I think it's very Jim Jones meets body horror involving sharks. Like I think it's very Shark Cult is the smallest way to write this as far as, telling people what's in it. And it is probably for the most part pretty much what you would expect it to be. And I don't know outside of that because I'm super fascinated in real life by the concepts of cults, and because they're real, right? Like they exist. Like people buy into this stuff, and they drink Kool-Aid and they kill other people on other people's behalf. Like these are real things, and I think it's super scary in general. But I love this animal. I think I'm an animal lover. I care about animals to an insane degree most of the time, unless it's a roach, and then who cares? But if it's anything else, any type of like even bugs, like if I can set them free, I will set them free. Like I've rescued tons of cats. Most of them still live with me, and like I'm a huge animal lover. But there are people in the animal lover world that take things too far. They don't focus on the right things. They lose their sense of humanity by trying to embrace this idea of protecting and helping this animal. And I thought that was super appealing. And so I just leaned into that as much as I could. And yeah, I mean, to summarize it, it's a shark cult. It's Jim Jones meets shark body horror. And that's, you like though any of those things, check any boxes and you may like this.
And again, just having read the book, just to highlight that point, if those sound unrelated to you, if you're like, how does this work? I think they're integrated really smoothly. Like it
Oh,
feels like
thank you.
one solid concept. I think Shark Cult is a great way to
That's good.
describe that.
Yeah.
But you were like, if it's pretty much exactly what you're expecting. And it's like, even the first time you told me about this, I did not know what to expect.
That's
Um,
good, right? I don't know.
yeah. I think you did
Mhm.
a great job too, because it does. It feels like
Yeah.
one solid,
That's good
conclusive
because
story, and
yeah, that's good because it was not it was a very overwhelming project. And to Steve, you talking about like the process, like I put Tasha and Kat under obscene time constraints for these things, like
Mm.
obscene. Like I finished writing this not even a month ago, and here we are, like trying to, or about a month ago, I guess now. But it's like and then to take it on to this level of like, I literally got to a point where I was like, okay, if I can't finish this the way I want to, it's not coming out until next year, because there was a lot to put into it, and I was trying to do it in a pretty short amount of time, like I do literally every single project. And yeah, I'm that makes me feel good that you said that. I didn't know how it was gonna do. I don't know. Like I worried about getting feedback and it being like, this isn't working, right? And so far that's not what I've heard. So, I got that going for me.
It's a
just to
cool
touch.
concept too, though. In terms of, sorry,
Absolutely.
not to
Yeah.
cut you
Oh
off,
no,
Kat, but
you're
like,
sorry.
because we talk about like sort of the craziness of the idea, but that's sort of what fuels cults to begin with, right? It's like the like looniest of ideas can spark like zealotry, right? Is that the
Yeah.
right word?
Yes.
Right? Or like
Yeah.
something like these wild ideologies, like of
Yeah.
like and sort of like no thinking you're doing good, but then just taking that to sort of this like wild extreme and sort of go on to like the point early on. I forgot to sort of hop in. You were saying is like, you hope it sort of doesn't come off too silly. I think that's also kind of like the plus side of putting it in writing versus it being a movie, for
Oh,
example.
sure.
right? Because your brain can kind of do a lot with it versus
Mhm.
like, limited
Having the
effects on the
visuals.
Sci-Fi Channel, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, I don't, I think, like, there are moments, like, I did it recently, I got to do a reading of some of this for, the Zervis Channel's, Sunday Zervis, and I, like, was reading it, and I got so into, like, my disdain. First of all, I'm not a super big fan of religion, in case anyone who has been watching anything from us did not already know that. I am very bitter towards religion because I grew up Southern Baptist, and that's usually what happens. And so I'm super bitter. And so when I get into that mindset of, writing, there's like a part where 34 just goes on this tangent, and she doesn't say that much through almost any other section of the book. It's just this one part where she's like, you know what? I got some shit to say. And I was reading it for this thing to post on, or to give to Elford for the Zervis Channel. And I was like in it. Like I like I got so into it. And I think there are moments like that where it does feel like it's super easy to take it seriously, because she's like, you guys are fucking insane. And there's just these emotional things that come into play. And I think it makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, I think the concept itself, if somebody were to just say it without reading it or having a reference point, I think it does sound very silly. So, there's that.
You mentioned the time constraints also. What is the significance of, because if it couldn't come out the way you wanted
Yeah.
by this deadline, you were going to do it next year. What's the significance for the audience of having it out in August?
I really just wanted it out before summer was over. Sharks are very summery. I felt like, and who knows, because I have no idea what people buy or why they buy things. No idea. But I had a feeling like this is not an idea that would do very well in fall or winter. It felt sharks are very summery. That's when a lot of people are watching shark movies and talking about sharks, and so it just felt like it needed to be a summer release. And so if I couldn't get it out by the end of this month, I was just going to hold off and just release it next summer, which would have messed things up because next year's the year of the wolf. But I would have figured it out because it was important for me. Like I really wanted to get this out. So, but that's really all it was. It just felt like it would do better in the summer. So, summer.
My poor little lady bonked her head,
Oh,
missing her jump.
Danny.
Uh,
Poor
sorry about
thing.
that. I had to scoop her up because she looked all confused. Um, I think that's really interesting that you said that. I also associate I publish shark books whenever I have, like, the contractual obligation to publish shark books, but I
Right.
do typically associate sharks with summer as well. We've got Shark Week, we have, Jaws, and we've got a lot of beach movies,
Yeah.
and it makes sense. I do think it's really interesting for this book specifically because it gives winter vibes to me.
Really?
I
Huh.
think because of the isolation and
Yeah.
it's a very cold atmosphere despite having things that we do typically associate with summer. I think it makes it a very like ubiquitous kind of, you could
Yeah.
read this whenever, and I don't think it would be entirely out of place.
Hmm.
Um, so that was interesting to me that the
Yeah.
push for it to be a summer release. But I,
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
logic is sound also.
Yeah. My plan was to sound like I knew something about marketing. I don't know how convincing that was, but
Truth is, we want
that
people to
was,
read this no matter what time they get it, right?
yeah. Well, I did the same thing though. I mean, obviously this is slightly different because it's like holiday specific, but I did the same thing with like Mrs. Claus. I was like, this has to come out in December. And I didn't, I really am, I'm not super great about promoting my own stuff anyway, but I kind of felt after Christmas, I was like, I really probably shouldn't push this too much because it's Christmas werewolves and who knows how people feel about that when it's not Christmas. And so, I don't know.
It'll be nice though, because next year for Shark Week, you'll have like, hey, check out the shark book.
If you like that and you love Deep Blue Sea and other weird things, here we
Yeah.
go. Yeah,
And starting Thanksgiving this year, we're gonna push Mrs. Claus again.
that's right. Yeah. And next year, spoiler alert, the wolves from Mrs. Claus will be back for an October Halloween book release. Zeus help me, but it will. I'm gonna get it out. I've already got most of it outlined. So
Oh yeah.
Kat, Tasha, and myself will our werewolf versions of ourselves will be back next October, and you want to know what's going on before then. So
So yeah, Christmas
Mhm.
book.
Christmas wolves.
And we have to. I can't believe we've made it this far in. Do you have a copy of the book? Do you have a physical copy of the book there? Can you show off the cover? Can you like? I
It's
was
gorgeous.
so excited when I saw because you scooped this one up from Grim Poppy
So fast.
so fast. I was like, I
So
love
fast.
that she's got a plan for it's like
Yeah.
because it's gorgeous art. And what about so
Mhm.
we've talked about this a little bit, and it's a tricky question because we don't want to get into spoiler territory,
Right.
but vibe wise,
Mhm.
no content. What
Yes.
about the cover made like how much the flowers tie in is a very interesting motif in the book. Was that something that you had like pre-planned? Did you see the flowers and be like, "This is the book," or was it like just vibes, or
This is listen,
what made you recognize this as the cover of your book when you saw it?
this wasn't going to be a book. Here's the thing. When Christy from Grim Poppy, if you don't know, because she's done all the covers of my individual projects that have been released, we're big fans of her. So she did her. We're Kat and I are a patron. I can't remember if Tosh is a patron or not, but we're patrons. I've even gotten Steve to look at her covers. Like,
Oh, I own one. I don't have a book yet for it, but I own one.
but you have one, right? Okay, so huge fan of hers. I get the email notifications, and she does a lot of werewolf stuff. So I'm very quick to check the thing to see if there's anything that I can steal and make people mad about. And so I went in, and if you remember, Kat, this set had this one. It had the academia one that belongs to you,
Oh, yeah.
and it had that other one that had like the florals with the puppet strings.
Mhm.
So Flowers, the name of the game, basically. She does phenomenal floral work. And so I saw this cover and I was like, no idea, but I love the flowers. And the aquatics, I gotta have it. Like, so I just stole it for no reason. I had no plans. So, and you may remember this, Kat, just being a part of the community longer than me, but there was a series of aquatic horror charity books that were supposed to come out.
I was actually scheduled to be in that
I
class,
thought
so
so.
yeah, I
Okay.
remember.
So
I
do you
remember the debacle.
remember? I think it was either the first one or the second one. I can't remember. One of them was specifically dedicated to sharks. That was the charity. Okay. So that was back when I like even tried to submit. I don't do that anymore. I just do my own stuff now. But I was trying to submit stories and kind of get my feet wet. And I started writing this story of a person, they wake up without their memory and they meet this very strange looking person, and it's a shark cult and it's very weird. And it was going to be a short story. And that blew up, did not happen. And some, not so great things with that. And so it just kind of went away, disappeared, never finished writing it. I had like the first scene, which I think ultimately here ends up being like the first chapter. And I was like, never going to touch it again. And so I kept looking at this cover and I was like, it's aquatic in general. It doesn't have a shark on it, but it's aquatic. I was like, I think I'm going to try to revisit the shark cult. And that was when you and I started talking about it. I was like, I think I'm going to try to revisit that story. So I got this with nothing. I had nothing. And then because there were florals on it, I was like, I have to make sure that I incorporate that, or nothing with the cover is going to make sense the entire book. Like I needed it to make sense because it's about a shark cult, not an octopus cult, right? And there's flowers all over it. So I was like, I got to add something about the flowers. And hopefully that worked, because that was pulling it. What is the phrase? Grasping at straws. And so, but that's really, anytime I take a cover, I never have anything for it. That's the spoiler for that. Never. I just take it and make people mad for no reason. That's it.
You just get in there and wind people up.
I do. I did put, in my defense, though, the last werewolf sets, right? I did leave one of the three. I took two, but I left one. And I put in there that if anyone ever was like genuinely upset because they had a story they had for that, to just literally message me, they can have it. Like, I'm not going to fight somebody just because I like literally, I'd rather it go to somebody who already has a story. So if you ever see me stealing stuff off there and you really got something, just DM me. I give a lot of them to Kat anyway. So
You're also a terrible influence on me because I almost picked up that wolf cover that you left. Like the art was so pretty, and then
it
it's
was
like I
pretty.
have more wolf covers than I have wolf stories already. I don't need to be doing this.
Whoops.
Um, refocusing on the aquatic horror though. Would you get your tail out of my face? This is why I don't invite you to interviews. Um,
Don't
sorry.
listen to her, Danny. You can come back anytime you want to, you
Perfect
sweet
co-host.
girl.
She just whapped me in the face with her tail and it's like, hey. um so this was something we were talking about also. 34, the main character of
Mhm.
your book,
Yep.
is very protective um
hmm
toward one of the other characters, and I think just in general she has this very
Yeah.
strong sense of morality, and
Mhm.
she does have this very protective gene. I don't have that, and we were talking about this where it's like a lot of her actions I kind of had to sit with and think about because they
Yeah.
felt very authentic, but they were not instincts that I have.
hmm
And I was wondering, because I thought this conversation was interesting in the IM, so I'm like bringing it out. I'm airing our dirty laundry again. How much of yourself do you think you put into the character?
Probably more than I meant to, which was things I hadn't really thought about until you asked me, or we talked about this before. It's weird because there were two things well, really, I guess three things, technically, three things that came out in this that are very representative of me. One in a physical sense, and two in a mental or emotional sense. And the first is that there's a very specific scene towards the beginning of the book where she's discussing the way her body looks in the clothing that they have put her in because of the initial body modification. That's in chapter 1, not a huge spoiler. And so, I really wish that more characters, particularly women, because I don't really care about men, sorry, but particularly female characters, if they were plus size. A lot of times, when a writer takes time to discuss what their female characters look like, they're a very specific thing. And so I was like writing that scene and I was like, what can I put in here to make it clear that she's not super, super skinny, that she's a normal sized woman? What can I do? And so that was something that I wanted myself to be in a book, because I want to see more of that. I want to see and read about people who look like me. I don't want to just constantly. Anyway, I digress. That's a deep rabbit hole. There's actually a YA author. What is their name? Something Bell. I cannot think. The name of the book series is Honey Bloods, though, and on the cover there is this very curvy vampire, and then her girlfriend is this very, very skinny. They're like, it's real life anyway, and so it's very cute. And I'm like, oh my god, what I wouldn't give to see more of that in like writing. So that came out. That was more of a me thing physically, but yeah, the anti-religion stuff I think slipped up a few times related to me, especially like I mentioned earlier with that very specific speech that she gives when she's like, you guys are crazy, and you don't make any sense, and I just want you to know that you're probably going to hurt me, but I got to get it out. And then yeah, the protective thing over the main person obviously being the small child. I think that's a natural instinct for me. I think I wouldn't limit it to me being a mother, but I'm sure that plays some kind of role in it. I've always been very sensitive to caring for children. In general, I had a nephew that grew up the middle child, and so he got not the best treatment from his parents growing up. He got ignored and kind of dismissed a lot, and I was always super sensitive to that, and I always felt like I needed to compensate. So he and I are, even now, he's an adult now, but we're still very, very close. And so I've always been like that about kids in general, children, no matter what age or part of my life, even before I was a mother. And I think instantly that just happens for me naturally. And so as I'm writing out, 34's kind of engagement with this child, it's this immediate, we are surrounded by bad guys and they've already done this to this child. Like, we have to do something. We can't just, and so I think like there are times where the hesitations wouldn't make sense, I think, to someone whose self-preservation would kick in. But I'm definitely somebody that would die trying to help someone, even maybe if they didn't deserve it. I think that comes up a couple times in the book too, where she's like contemplating the people that live there. And I'm like, do they really deserve, to be saved? Probably not. Some of them are pretty bad. And so there's kind of that. But I think maybe more than I meant to came out, because I didn't intend for that to be the case. But then you mentioned that when we had that conversation, and I was like, oh, well, maybe that was just kind of like me for a while there. But yeah, I more than I meant to, I think.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it made it because I've read books where the main character does stuff that I don't agree with. I
All
don't
the
see
time.
myself
Yeah.
doing, and I get really frustrated about it because it's like, who would do this? This was interesting because it felt so real, like the
Yeah.
emotions and the instincts and everything. Like they felt very authentic. I could understand
Oh.
why she was doing things, but I there were a couple times where I was like, I'd be out of here. I'd be gone so fast. Uh, so I thought that was really interesting. But
Yeah.
it's interesting that like you can put your own instincts in there without even necessarily meaning
I really
to.
need to. Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
hard not to. I think we have so much like ingrained or just like hardwired where it's kind of like, implicit and things just come through.
Yeah. Yeah. I think some people are able to step outside themselves and either like in a film sense, like act as a character that's not like they are in real life, or write characters. I don't know that I have that in me. I don't think I could like write as a perspective of like just like a garbage human being. Like I don't think I could do it. I think I'd act like not to say I'm like the best person in the world. I'm not, but I definitely think I'm a good person, and I would struggle to think effectively write something that didn't actually align with who I am in real life. I don't know that I have that in me, but there are plenty of people who do, who are super talented at it. But apparently I do it even at a subconscious level. So
Continuing on that theme, and again, if you have to kind of dance around spoilers here, I
okay.
understand. But were there any scenes that while you were writing, you felt very like I more than the normal amount of invested in? Like, did you have any emotional responses to any of the things that went onto the page?
Yeah. There is, yeah, there's a scene towards the end when all of the, you start getting the background on like what happened to kind of like how did these shark fanatics basically take over this underwater like research facility. And you start getting all of these pieces together, and there's this conversation in particular that 34 has with Meg, who's our in case the name didn't make sense to anyone. Come on, I'm clever, right? Megalodon. Anyway, and ABBA is Abyss. I don't know. I did a lot. There's a lot of that. A lot of that. Anyway, so there's a specific conversation when 34 is learning the reality of the situation that she finds herself in. And there's just these pieces of like this kind of these two sides of this weird coin where you're getting Meg being who she is, and then you're getting, MC's finally like realizing maybe who she is and those kinds of things. Some of those were hard to write. There's a specific reveal that was really hard to write for a little bit. Like the reveal of that was a little difficult. It's towards the end of the book, which I can't say why because it gives too much away. But it was, yeah, there's a couple of things, which is interesting because I have only written one other thing that affected me emotionally, genuinely. And I think Kat knows this specifically because we talked about it when you were editing and going through it. But there's a story in All the Little Voices about this house and this girl and their connection. And there's this conversation, these thoughts like, I don't know why, but that one got to me really. I don't know why. That one just hit me in my gut emotionally. And so this was really the only other thing that's done that. And it's just that specific conversation, because it's a vulnerable conversation. And you've got this weird sense that like our MC is like crumpled on the ground, a mess. She's hurt really bad, physically, mentally, emotionally. She's broken. And then you've got Meg, who's in this higher situation, kind of looking over her, saying all of these things. And it's very, it was very overwhelming, I think, for a little bit to write. And I think it was probably the only time I stopped for a little bit and took a break. I don't think it wasn't like so awfully hard to write it, but it definitely made me feel things I don't think I expected to feel knowing the story ahead of time. Like it's not a reveal to me. I knew I was going to do all of these things, but it was, well, I guess it's not true. One of them was kind of a last minute decision, but it was, that was really the only thing that I think got to me in that way, was just that one conversation in particular was just like, this bitch, you know?
Just a quick little congratulations from JR.
Oh, thank you.
And Tasha's cracking the editor whip.
Yeah.
And a shout out to the captivating book cover.
Yeah. The book cover is dope. I think the book cover is going to do most of my marketing for me, I think. Yeah.
Good motivation to choose a really good cover. Good motivation to use Christy, because
she's the shit. Yeah, she's so great at what she does. And so, you guys, so affordable. We're in the indie community. Nobody like
has money.
And she's super good to her patrons. If you're not a Patreon member and you're a writer, I think you might be missing out on some stuff, because she's amazing and she works with you, and she's so good to her patrons. So good to us.
So good.
Yeah.
Tasha agreeing that she is bossy.
Everyone knows that. That's not news.
So speaking of Meg,
yes,
did you have any inspiration? You mentioned that you felt like more of yourself had been in the protagonist than you had intended, and also that you were going to have a tough time writing like a garbage person. And obviously the book isn't from Meg's perspective, but
Sure.
what were you channeling to get? Meg has a lot of dialogue,
Yeah.
and so I feel like you must have been in that mindset more than maybe with the average villain,
Sure.
to kind of do like, what were you, how did you get there? What was the
Yeah.
inspiration? What were you thinking about? She's my
Yeah.
favorite, by the way. Meg is my favorite character.
Meg
I feel
is-
like I've been very vocal about this, but
Meg is a literal monster. She's like the worst of the worst, right? And Meg is very Jim Jones, very starting out, you know, obviously shouldn't be a spoiler. We've already discussed there's body modifications. Meg looks like a giant she shark. That's what she looks like. Like that's the way I intended for her to be described. And I sent like a piece of it to Tasha, I think, and I was like, what do you think of when you read this? Like, I need to know that the visuals are on point, because she needs to be menacing. But the thing is, she's so like soft at first. Like, you know that you can't trust her already because of her appearance. But if she looked like a human being and she spoke and treated you the way that she treats 34 in the beginning, there may not be that same level of distrust. And so the circumstances definitely don't help in the trust department. But I think she reminds me a lot of Jim Jones. She's very like, let me just level with you. Let me help you understand. I want us to be friends. You're safe here. You can be here with us. And we, you know, all these things. And she's very welcoming, right? And we're this home away from home kind of thing. And you can be who you are here and all these things, which is 100% what Jim Jones did, in case anyone didn't know. And I know too much about him, way too much for any normal human being. But there are some things that she says specifically that are Southern Baptist youth pastors. And so the moments when you see 34 kind of go, you know what, fuck you. Like those are the youth pastor moments. Those are the moments where I took things that were said to me as a kid in the church and just, I mean, they're added to obviously in the sense this is about like a shark cult, not just a regular cult. And so it's very those are the two things. That's where she came from. So like my historical knowledge of this horrible thing that really happened, and then my personal experiences growing up Southern Baptist and being an active part of church and dealing with youth pastors in a Southern Baptist environment, which 0 out of 10 did not recommend. And so those were those were easy to write because I had the knowledge base and the experience, and they were easy to respond to because I already had strong feelings about them. So
Was it cathartic? Would you it was Little Angel was, like, Southern Baptist
yeah,
Angel
yeah,
really justified in, like,
yeah,
getting to
yeah. I
tell
think
off the
Yeah, I mean, I think, and in one big way in particular at the end of the book, it's a very I win, yes. Yeah, no, I think it was. I think anytime I get an opportunity to kind of dive into a religious mindset, whether it's an extreme version like this or I have another short that's very it's more rooted in Catholicism, but anytime I get an opportunity to write about that or indulge in it, it always feels like I'm healing a little bit of what I went through, I think, in that regard, because it's very gross and I hate it so much. And
Mm.
so, yeah, I think it was cathartic. I hated Meg so much, and
Yeah.
there were times where I I'm typing the things that she's saying and I'm like, ugh, you know, like, I don't like that. She's the worst. I hate her so much. And at the same time, it must have worked if she came across as a believable villain. Those things must have come together to work really well, because she was not, I don't think, a super easy character to write from start to finish, because I had to slowly move her into the clear villain that she is, versus she doesn't start out aggressive and angry. In fact, our MC is not, other than the body modification not done by Meg, she's not physically harmed until about halfway through the book. So it takes time, for those things to accumulate. And in the meantime, Meg's just like, we're all friends here. Like, she's like, just come be part of our weird cult and let us do things while you're sleeping that you don't know about, like that kind of stuff. And she's so nice. And she's like, let me show you my room with my little fishies. And like, she's just a very obnoxiously horrible person. And so in the grand scheme, I did have a lot of fun getting all of that out of my system. But yeah, she was not super easy to write. And so I'm hoping that flowed well and worked, because she's complex, I feel. And it was cathartic, but difficult, I think, to write her.
It was really interesting. You mentioned
Oh, hi,
how
Rob.
Oh,
Hello
hi.
from Rob, making it to a live stream.
No, thank you so much. Hi, so happy to see your name pop up. Hope you're doing good. Yeah, but anyway, yeah.
So interesting to have you mention how long she's nice, because not only is it that very Jim Jones thing, it was something I was surprised by, because she's she shows up, she's a big shark,
Yes.
and and she's very nice, and it's
Yeah.
I'm already skeptical of nice characters in cult stories, but it's
Rightfully so.
and whenever anyone's too nice, it's like, what's their deal? But I was like,
Yeah.
so that it's coming up and that she's gonna be evil, but like I thought the other shoe was gonna drop a lot faster. You did a really good job balancing like how menacing she is with how nice she acts
Thanks.
outwardly, which is why she's my favorite. Like I never knew what she was about to do, and I loved it. It was like
Yeah, thank you for saying that. That means a lot, because she was complicated, and that was the thing, is like, this is a tiny book, okay? I refuse to call it a novella. I'm just not. People give me mad, I'm not. But it's a small book, it's a little over 100 pages. It's small. But I still wanted to drag out those inevitable moments, because I thought that there's like these things going on that I think add to it. And I hope that this comes across, is that the taking the time to get there is building this inside the reader of like, oh my God, any moment now, like, but you don't know. And I think that the moments when it shifts from that moment, the tonally, and I mean, everything is, once you hit chapter, I think 7, which is Frenzy, once you hit that, then it's just boom, 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 all the way to the end. And I did that on purpose, because I wanted it to be time with 34, time with this cult, at least enough to feel worried and concerned and anxious about, okay, when is this gonna, go to this next thing? And then Frenzy happens, and it's just on from there. And so I'm hoping that taking that and dragging that out is effective in that way, because that's definitely why I did it that way.
It's something that I'm gonna use the bad word here. It's something that I really like about novellas or novella length short books.
Yeah.
Is that I like that because I'm someone that really appreciates being like feeling that tension in a story, and I
Mhm.
feel like with novels there's a lot of pressure to like set up new things.
Yeah.
Whereas you have taken a situation, and it's a situation with a lot going on. There's a lot of nuance. There are a lot of elements.
Yeah.
There are a lot of sources of fear and tension, but you let us feel what 34 is feeling, which I think was really clever because it's like there is time to let those things sit.
Oh, good.
Um, and I liked that a lot. That being said, I am gonna throw you under the bus now. Why do you hate women? No, what is because you all of the inspiration that you listed for Meg, men, lots
Mhm.
of men. So what made you like?
Mhm.
What was the decision to make Meg a female antagonist? Also, one of my favorite tropes, by the way. Like one of my
Yeah.
favorite things to look for. I love
Um,
powerful
yeah.
evil women.
No, I love female villains in general. Um, I think that the reason I always feel or have always felt that it's weird that people are so quick to trust men in these cult circumstances. I would find it far more believable if the leader was a female because women naturally tend to be not everybody is like this, but no, more nurturing, warm, more friendly. People assume, and this goes in a lot of negative directions just as much as it does positive ones, that women are more open to interactions and that they're more approachable. Leave us alone. But that's what people think. And so I think that putting her in charge was also this weird sort of feminist approach too, because I didn't want a man in charge. I didn't want there to be, I mean, if you grew up in a public school system where you were friends with teenage girls, then this is what they're like. Like, they exist. Women can be these really strong and smart and conniving and manipulative villains. And I didn't want a man. I didn't want it to be this like thing of a man in this position versus this female in this position, because 34 is a female. And so I wanted it to be more because I think overall, and this may have been a subconscious thing, but this is how I feel in real life. There are a lot of women that are the reason women can't get any further than we are. Like there are women that block roads for other women. And I think that it's women against women done in a right way can be a really effective storytelling mechanic, but it has to be done in a right way. And this isn't, Meg, I think if you met Meg prior to this, you'd be friends with her. I don't think you would second guess because she does have that other side of her. And like you mentioned, you get this little bit of story where she came from and why she is the way she is. And almost for like a second, you're like, oh, but then you're like, oh no, fuck Meg. Like, like you get to this place where you're like, man, I really feel for her because she does technically come from a good place, right? But yeah, ultimately, I just didn't want it to be a man versus woman story. I wanted it to be a strong female villain that did this. She has the brains, the brawn, the knowledge base to do these things, and against someone who didn't, because she doesn't remember anything about who she is or where she came from. And I just liked the dynamic of that. Maybe in another 5 years people will be shipping them in these secret Reddit rooms or something, I don't know, but
It's me.
um
I'm doing it right now. I'm like opening up the Reddit.
yeah, like Meg and 34 lived happily ever after at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I just didn't want it to be a guy. I didn't want it to be a female.
There's an interesting point that Rob was
Al
bringing up. Allison Mack from Smallville, how she was involved in bringing people into, yeah,
Yeah.
into the cult. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I do remember that actually. Yeah. I mean, I
Mhm.
think that's people sometimes assume that women are weak or they're safe because, of the fact that they're a woman. And so, I think it makes more sense for a cult leader to be a woman. It just makes more sense to me. No
And
offense
even
to the
though
cult leader men, I guess, that are watching this, but I feel like it just made more sense.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it to be man versus woman. I wanted it to be shark woman versus memory loss woman.
What's a flip
That's
side
what-
kind of thing? The idea of a cult leader being nurturing coming in, right? Because I feel like the male cult leaders, they're more predatory in the sense of like they're coming in as these charismatic leaders. I'm going to fix your problems versus, someone like Meg or, sort of what you're saying is like a female cult leader might be more of like, here, I'm going to care for you.
Yeah.
Sort of mentality.
Yeah.
And it is
Yeah.
interesting because like a lot of them are seen as kind of like the father or patriarch of their respective cults, but they do have that very male mindset where it's like, I am going to fix this. I can teach you how to be better. And with the Alice and Max situation specifically, like even though that was a cult leader that was a man, even though Keith Raniere was a man, Allison Mack did a lot of the recruiting for him because she was very approachable, and
Yeah.
they kind of talked about that in some of the documentaries that came out about that cult, where it's like she can just
All the offense.
All the offense to the men cult leaders watching.
And our
Hey,
beta reader.
Chris.
Love
Chris.
you too. Yes, thank you so much for being such a big part of this process. You missed the part where we talked about your beta reading and how pivotal that was and tweaking and making this what it ended up being. So thank you so much for doing that. Yay for female. That's right. Hey, Sophie.
Yeah.
Yes, all the female villains. Yeah, I think that the female just makes more sense in general.
It makes a lot of sense, and it made a lot of sense. I think having that gentle nature offset by something like as extreme as non-consensual body modification, it was good. It was smart. I liked it a lot. I thought it was very effective.
Yeah.
I know that we're kind of approaching the end of the hour, but I do have one big question for you. You've talked about the Year of the Wolf. What other things are you working on? Where do you, Angel? Where do you go from Shark Cult book?
I have no idea. Whatever
I
gets
feel like
written next. I do things by the seat of my pants, literally. I'm like, hey, you know what? Let's do this. And then I'm going to give Kat and Tasha 3 days. No, I don't know. I have a total of 5, maybe 6 werewolf books I intend to get out next year. One of which is going to be half written by Kat. And I've outlined at least half of all of them so far. So I'm moving right along. I'm trying to focus on that, which is why I didn't start my Halloween club thing this year. It's going to be next year, but I don't know. I mean, I've got a werewolf book next year that's going to be called Invite Only. It's about a werewolf dating app. And then I've got Halloween Club Book 1, which is going to be Our Werewolves Are Back for some mischief on Halloween night. I've got a really cool sapphic goddess ghost wolf story. I'm not sure where I'm going with that one yet. I'm working on it. And called Tastes Like Purple. That's one of the ones I'm working on. I have a massive story called Skilled Hands that's going to be about a werewolf who essentially hunts and kills his own kind, and he's got a broken past, and he's very battered and whatever. And I don't know, there's so much things. I have a Bridge Curse werewolf book that I'm working on for next year, but every project that's an individual project, voices, anthologies aside, is all werewolves. So it'll be werewolf all year.
I think Rob agrees.
Yes. Yeah, maybe it was Lauren. Lauren was so nice. Lauren was like, no, I love the way you write werewolf stories. And I was like, if I never get another compliment, I'm good. Like, werewolves are so important to me. And yeah, so it's going to be, I don't know. I think the weirdest, and I have a chemically one that I really want to maybe get out, but I don't want to overpromise, because that one's actually based off a short that's in our charity anthology. I was like, I know I have
cool cover art. Look at that.
Yeah, this comes out in a few weeks. My partner did the cover, the wrap. but I have a goopy, chemically based werewolf story in this, and I would like to turn that into a novella at some point. So I don't know if I'll have time to do it next year. It might be a little bogged down with other projects, but we'll see. So I don't know. That's all I got. And then otherwise, it's anthologies, right? So Lauren and I have an open call still for the Butterfly Effect anthology, which is a charity event or a charity anthology. We're wrapping up the Howlin' for You. I also have an open call that ends in like 2 weeks. About the housing crisis, called This House Is Not Ours. And at some point in the time, and between now and the end of the year, I have to announce the next room for that old house, and get that open. So those will all be out before the Butterfly Effect and the House anthology, those won't come out until 2025. But that old house, I'm going to get out before the end of the year. And then the Howlin' for You will be out in September. So
You said that you were not sure that the chemical one was going to come out next year. It's not like you've got 6 other books scheduled for next year. Like,
I know.
Get busy.
I know. I that's the thing is like, that's why I'm trying so hard to focus on getting my notes down now so I can start writing now. If I can get this 4-month head start, that might help me get them done in a timely manner. But I also, when I have like anthology stuff to do, it's hard for me to focus on my own stuff sometimes. And so it's like, like that was kind of the thing with Deorum coming out, and like Howling for You being so close. I was like, you know what? Howling is a charity anthology. I really want to make sure that's like 100% perfect. It has to be perfect before it can go out. I'm going to push that to September and try to get Deorum out in August instead of trying to force them super close together. It's just a lot to do for Tasha and Kat. And
I did appreciate that because Deorum went a lot easier from the formatting side of things.
I know.
It
I know.
It was nice.
Yeah.
I sent you this crazy thing. That's one of my favorite things about formatting for you is I sent you like this crazy thing that we did not talk about in any capacity. And you were like, this is beautiful. It's like, great.
Wait, what?
When I format stuff for you, I'm always like trying new weird stuff. And you're just always so on board. Because I didn't run any of the interior graphics by you. I was just like, I feel like doing interior graphics.
Yeah. So we've got the florals on the chapter heads, and then for the the breaks. Oh, there's one here. There we go. And you can't see it on camera, but you can see it in real life. It's got like bubbles and everything around it. No, I love it. It's so, what's so funny? Christy told me the other day she did a custom for the Halloween werewolf book that's going to come out next year. And she was like, I was like, oh my God, I love it. It's so perfect. And she was like, you are so easy to please. And I'm like, I feel like I'm such a nuisance. So thank you for saying She's like, oh, you're so easy to please. You just love everything. I'm like, well, I guess I got that going for me. I do not feel like I feel like a pain in the butt. I think the only time that I've really, now that I'm thinking about it, the only time it really pushed was we were trying to figure out how we wanted to do Sincerely Departed, our zombie epistolary horror, because we had so much we wanted to get on the front page. It was like a matter of
text.
The texting stuff. And so trying to figure out, and so and then I had typos in the back, that part that I'd sent her, and I was like, motherfucker. And so I was like, just one more change. I felt so bad, but she's like, you're so easy. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll take it. I've been called worse things. So anyway, so I'm glad that I'm not a pain in that regard. I know I give you like stuff and I'm like, can you have this done tomorrow? It's not that bad, but I feel like it's good that I at least balance it with being like, yeah, do whatever you want. Okay.
Yeah, there are clients where they're like, can I have this by the end of August? And I'd be like, you can have it in several months because I know there's going to be a lot of back and forth. But you always are just like on board when I do weird shit, and I love that.
No, I do whatever. I don't care. I typically go into these things with no. And it's funny because I joke about this, but it's so true. When Tasha sends me edits, I select and approve all. And then I just go through and adjust the things that are like the questions or the comments or like those kind of things. But otherwise, whatever she says, it's fine. I know. I know she knows better than me. I'm not trying to. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanted to like? I feel like I got too excited about the shark cult and the and some of the behind the scenes stuff and the characters. There are just so many interesting things to talk about in this book. That I feel like I didn't take time to introduce this in any way, like you should do at the beginning of an interview. Is there anything that you would want people to know coming into Deorum Abyssi?
Um,
Abyssi?
Probably not. I mean, I would just say like don't have any expectations, right? Like think shark cult, but leave it as like open-ended as possible and then just kind of see what happens. Because I think that my hope is that it's not going to be what's expected in a good way. Like I'm hoping people will think over the top, silly CGI shark kind of things, right? But then they get into this and they're like, oh shit, I actually care about like what's happening, to these characters. Because that's something that when I am writing things, like that's the character relationship to the reader is super important to me because I feel very connected to every character that I write, even Meg's awful self. But yeah, I think that's only really the only thing I would say is hear shark cult, but kind of leave it open ended and just see where it takes you and how you feel. Cause I think I feel it's pretty unique. It came from a weird place. It's definitely a weird story. It goes to some weird places, but it's a very interesting commentary on human beings in a weird way, I think. And when we take things that we care about, maybe a little too extreme, and kind of trying to balance that with morality and humanity. So hopefully, it hits and checks some boxes for some people.
It checked a lot of boxes for me. I was pushy about this one.
You were?
So I'm sure it's not a surprise to you. It's probably also not a surprise to the people watching because I think the community knows me well enough to know that body mod shark cult is like right up my alley. But it checks a lot of boxes. It checks a couple boxes I wasn't like even expecting because it's just there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of depth.
I know it's like we've been saying that it's so different from everything that you've written, but I also like hear shark cult and I'm like, that's also so Angel though. Like,
Is it?
Well, maybe sharks.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I love sharks. Yeah.
I was like, I know you're gonna do something with sharks,
Yeah.
but you're trying to do something different. And I think that's where, and it does take it in a refreshing place. It isn't just sort of rinse repeat shark story.
Yeah, no, and we didn't talk about this, but I one of the other things that was super important was these are not great white sharks.
Yes.
I was not going in the direction of great whites because we always do great whites.
Mm-hmm.
Always. And and not that they're not scary. I don't go in the ocean. I'm not playing with no great whites, but there are scary other sharks like hammerheads. Hammerheads are scary. I've researched so many things about hammerheads, and there's a scene where you get to read about, not see, but you get to read about a hammerhead eating something. And I was like, they got weird heads. How do they eat? And I had to like look it up. And I looked it up and I found, and people may know this, I did not know this. Hammerheads eat stingrays, okay? Stingrays could be potentially very dangerous to a hammerhead, but they eat them anyway because they really like eating them. And the way that they eat them is they take one end of their hammerhead and they pin it. And then they eat it while they're holding it down. And I was like, that is so scary. I don't like that at all. And so anyway, hammerheads are very scary, but they're such unique creatures and they have so many of them at the aquarium. And I was like, just watching them like, yeah, I'd be so scared. Like if I ran into one of those in the ocean, 100% I'd be scared. And they're super docile. They're not aggressive sharks by any means. But it was
except the stingrays.
like it's well, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, sharks just love eating people. That's not true. That's not true. Not even great whites. People swim with great whites all the time and nothing happens. Like it's not what we think it is. But I just wanted to do a different type of shark. And the great hammerheads can get as big as great whites. So some of them can get specific species can get very big and they're scary. And I thought that was interesting too. So I wanted to do hammerheads instead of great whites.
Hammerheads are the best.
They're the coolest. They're my favorite shark. And I learned a lot of very strange things about them. Like the eating thing was wild.
Wow. And then just going back to Tasha. Tasha doesn't mind the quick turnaround.
That's a sad funny.
Oh. And it is interesting. I do think we see a lot of great whites. It's also I love that a lot of because sharks are scary.
Yeah.
The idea of having to be confronted with a shark, but I like the very human element in this. Like
Yeah.
it's not the sharks that are necessarily the problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, like there's a scene, there's like a part where she's like yelling at the soldier types. That's what I call them the whole book. And she's like, you can like, it's like something to the effect of like, you can save sharks without becoming monsters. Like this very just kindergarten way of looking at it. But it's like, she's right. Like you really could do a lot more for them if you weren't so busy doing things to yourselves and being weirdos. Like, so it's yeah, the hammerhead thing was like, I was like, I knew going into it I wanted to do a different kind of shark. I was like, don't want to do great whites. It's super overdone. And I think hammerheads are super cool. And again, not very aggressive sharks. So the circumstances in which they become aggressive in the book are very specific situations. It's not what other films and stuff make sharks out to be, which is one of the reasons, we'll call back to Sky Sharks, that I love Sky Sharks so much. They use hammerheads. They have hammerheads too, and it's so great. I love it. I'm like, oh, look at that. Not just great whites. So
I think that was all of the questions that I had. Is there did I miss anything? Is there stuff that you want to talk about? Because I always have like hidden behind the scenes gems. That it's
yeah.
like I don't know how to work this into a conversation, but I want the readers to know. Do you have anything like that? Any
Um
research points? Any
Man, no, I don't think so. I think the only other thing I wanted to do, oh, I already put it down. Where'd it go? Got lost in my, oh, there it is. It slid over. This is actually my partner's copy. Mine's downstairs. I was able to get blurbs for this.
Oh,
Obviously you're
yes.
one of them, Kat, but so this one, the one that's on the front, my lighting is really bad right here. Is from Chris, The Love for Horror. Deorum Abyssi is the perfect blend of body horror, emotion, and twist. It was one of the more unique and creative storytellings I've ever read. Angel's writing is an immersive experience. It makes you feel like you are watching it in real time. I was glued to the book from start to finish. It's like, that's the best. And then Katz says, feverish, strange, and absolutely unmissable. And from the Sinister Scoop, aka Tasha, everyone loves a good cult story, but I can assure you, you've never met a cult quite like this one. This underwater body horror tale will make you cringe in the best way and set your imagination swimming down paths you'd never expect. And so, yeah, I think the biggest reason too I wanted to even read them is because I think without like people like my friends being interested in helping me kind of encourage this insanity, I guess I probably wouldn't have gone through with publishing this, because it's so strange, and I'm like terrified that no one's gonna like it or care about it or whatever. And so I don't think I would have probably had the courage to put it out if y'all had not been so forthcoming with the support, because it's, I'm still
annoying.
learning.
He means
I still
annoying.
what?
Annoying. You mean annoying. We were bothering.
Mostly you were the only one. Let's
I know.
make it
I was
me.
like every day. I was
Voices
like chanting
production.
"shark cult" in the chant.
I know. And there was like one day where I was like, oh, I'm like distracted. I really want to work on this. Oh, Ruth Anna did this amazing cover that involved an owl. And I was like, I got it. And I was like thinking of the stories, and I was like, I really want to work on this. And you were like, no.
Shark cult. It was
Shark
worth it
cult.
though. I would do it all again.
I'm glad. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grew up on like really cheesy sci-fi horror stuff, a lot of aquatic horror, of course. And so, it was kind of fun to kind of dive into those things and remember those things, and callbacks to like, Deep Blue Sea, a lot of the really bad stuff I used to watch with my dad with like creature, like, because I've seen all kinds of sharks or shark films, like shark versus this and that, and space sharks and sky sharks and land sharks and all kinds of sharks, like all kinds, And so it was kind of cool in that regard, but I don't know, I would have had the courage to put it out if I didn't have support behind the scenes. So thank you guys for that.
Of course.
Dive into.
You can always count on Tasha for the shark.
Oh, I know.
puns.
She couldn't get out of that blur without putting the word swimming in there. She was like, there's no way. I have to fix this. It has to say this in there somewhere.
No.
Mm.
Kat just does whatever she wants. We all just live in Kat's world.
Yeah. Like moving people around. Hey, write me a book about shark cults. Rob, write me a book about haunted apartments. What are you doing? Get off this live stream.
You've got stuff to do, Rob.
Come on. No, I do get really pushy. I got really excited about this one, and I was right. That's the thing, is that you've encouraged me, because I was a menace and I was rewarded with a book about shark cult. So now I've learned that behavior is okay.
How you get things done.
The
Yeah,
squeaky,
everybody
what is
go
it? The
work.
squeaky wheel gets the oil, something like that. Yeah. No, I don't know. I'm terrified about this one still. Like I stayed away from number checking today, and like I just wanted to do, I really want people to really, I want this to take off so badly. Like I think it's super fun. I think it's different. And it's really interesting to see kind of branching out into things that I wouldn't normally, have even indulged. So it's to make it a full length story like this and not just a short story was a feat in and of itself. Because there were times where I really struggled to stretch it, because I was like, I worried about adding too much and taking away from, and I wanted it to be concise, but I needed it to also still be longer. And so it was this constant thing. And I don't know. So, I hope people like it,
I
and
think the risk paid, like, obviously, it's release day. We don't know what the numbers are going to look like
sure.
immediately or over time, but I think that the risk really paid off, because you've done something really unique.
Yeah.
And the early reception, at least from me and Tasha and Chris and Steve, has been really good. I think that
Yeah.
this is going to like really find its niche, and that doing something interesting, I think, is the most important thing. But I understand being stressed about numbers, but you've already kind of succeeded, I think, in doing the book. Like, it
Oh,
just,
thank you for
it's
saying that.
amazing.
Yeah. It's cool. I think I hope people care about 34 is the biggest thing. Like, I think if you can start to read it and you can connect with her, at least on some level, I think it makes for a really crazy ride, because there are times in like writing it where I was like, what's going to happen to her? Like I need to know that she's going to be okay. And it's, it's finding like, we talk about this a lot in horror in general, right? About this, like people like decisions and the things that they do and how they don't always make sense. Because if they didn't stay living in the haunted house, it would be a very short movie, right? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think that in the situation, it's like you can either give into or shy away from or take an easy way out. But I think you get a good sense of the fact that 34 just isn't like that. Like there's just something about her, and we don't get a lot of insight into that. That's on purpose, but it's, she takes things and she's like, I gotta keep trying. Like, and she has no memory. She has no idea why she's even doing these things, what awaits her, if anything. And there's still just this something that is inside of her that is telling her you have to keep trying. And I think that it's something that anybody who's ever been put in any sort of survival scenario can relate to, at least at a core level, even aside from like the hesitations that she has and some of the other decisions, but just at a core human level of, I have to keep pushing through this. I can't just give up. And so I think if people can connect with her early on, I think it can make for a pretty good experience overall.
Absolutely. I think it did. And this probably isn't a surprise to you, just with the nature of the book, but
Yeah.
this is my favorite of your releases so far.
Okay.
This one really resonated with me. I liked, I prefer this length of story anyway, so I
Yeah.
might be a little bit biased. I also prefer shark cults and body modification. So this one was stacked, like against the, but I thought you did a really good job. I think it's a
Thank
very
you.
seamless transition from short fiction into
Slightly longer.
longer fiction, into not novellas.
Yeah. Categorically it is, but I refuse. It's so close. So close. I can't do it. Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, it's very difficult because almost all of my writing experience has been through like RP formats, right? With like online group writing and things. So that's not long writing. I mean, it feels long when you're doing it because it can be like thousands of words, right? But it's not the same thing as writing an entire story on your own. And I think I'm getting there. I think my Skilled Hands book is probably, if I think Splitting Hairs won't count because it'll be a 50-50 project, but I think Skilled Hands is going to be the longest thing because of just how much history I have with that character. But this was something I just decided to do kind of last minute when I got the cover. And so, yeah, I was pretty impressed with my ability to stretch it into a full story. And I like things that move. Like, I don't like reading stuff like, I know Anne Rice is like an icon and I get that, respect it, whatever. But she takes like 30 pages to describe a leaf falling. And I'm like, I don't care. Give me the dialogue, give me the action. And so that tends to be how I write, which I think naturally can mean it's going to be a little bit shorter than it would be if I wrote a lot of the extra stuff. So that much probably won't ever change. But yeah, I think I did okay making this one a little bit longer than because I think Mrs. Claus was a 5x8. And so this is a 6x9. So Mrs. Claus was like just at 100 pages, I think, or something like that, but it was a
Yeah.
smaller format. So it really, and if it had been a 6x9, it wouldn't have been. It would have been a really, really thin book, I think is
Yeah, I
what Kat
remember
told me.
pushing for the 5x8
You did,
because it
because
was
you
like, this
said
is gonna look like a pamphlet.
you were like, it's going to be too small. And it worked. No, it worked out great. It's the perfect, but I like floppy books, but they're only floppy if they're long enough to be floppy. So
Yeah.
yeah, fair enough. So good feedback on doing that one as a 5x8, but
I have to talk myself into like sizes sometimes where it's like this length does not justify this trim size.
yeah.
But it's I think I was really happy. This is such a small, like, nerdy behind the scenes peek into formatting. I was
Uh-huh.
really happy when I checked the word count on this because you were like, it's longer, and then it ended up being like the word count was shorter than you had told me initially that it was.
Yeah.
Because you told me that it was like, I think 6K short of the 50,000, and it ended up being like in the 30,000 range. And I was
Yeah.
surprised, and I was like, oh no, am I gonna have to tell her it's a 5x8? It was very satisfying to click the like 6x9 trim option and be like,
Oh,
it's still like over, it's the required amount of pages. Like, it's gonna look good at that
Yeah.
size. Because I knew it was gonna make you happy, like
yeah.
that
Yeah.
it wasn't gonna be another 5x8.
Yeah. I do prefer the 6x9, and I did want it to be, I want it to make I want it to be to look like a book. Like, you know what I mean? And then like, and I was thinking too, like totally sort of on the subject, but not really. Like, this is the biggest anthology that we've done.
Yeah.
Because this is,
That was another one where, like, because I had read some of the short stories, and in my mind, the anthology just wasn't that big. And then when I like hit the
Yeah.
6x9 button, and it was still like,
yeah,
the
it's
page count was
two.
still up there. I was like, oh, big book.
Yeah. Yeah, it's at like 270, 275. That's the biggest one. Like, when you put that compared to the other ones, it's the biggest
Yeah.
of all the anthologies. It's even bigger. Sincerely Departed was the biggest, but then this one was bigger, thicker rather.
I was
But
surprised how long Sincerely Departed was, because, and that's how formatting stuff is when you do epistolary formatting. But
yeah.
it was like not that many words. And then like seeing the book in person, it's like, oh, it kind of got away from me.
Tosh, hold
What?
on.
But yeah, anyway. Thanks for hosting, Kat.
Yeah, thanks for having me on to host. I'm sorry for leaking all of our IMs and throwing you under the bus about your hatred of women. But no, it was a pleasure to be here, and thank you for letting me be so involved in this.
Yeah, of course.
It was it was a wild ride, and I'm really, really proud of you on release day. So
Thank you. No, it was super critical to me to have you involved. I mean, Shark Cult's also very cat, right? So it was very there's several things in this that are there just for you. And so it's very yeah, no, it means a lot to me. I think like, Tasha and I, speaking of behind the scenes and private conversations, Tasha and I were talking about this earlier about like the whole numbers and success and like how well things are doing versus not doing, um and just kind of this perspective of I can't remember exactly what she said. Now I'm drawing a total blank, and we text way too much for me to find it really quick. But she had kind of pointed out something that in reference to kind of us as a whole, so like everybody involved, Steve, me, anybody involved with voices, and just kind of what we represent in general and how meaningful that is. And I told her, I was like, you're right, I needed to hear that, because I think I try not to. We all want the numbers. We all want to be able to just do the things that we love and get paid to do them, so we don't have to do shit we hate. And so we all want that, right? And so, but I try really hard to stay grounded in that and remembering why I do so much of the things that I do and why I push for the things that I do, because I do care about things. And I the money would be really nice, but it's, for the most part, I think we all know like the writing thing is not. Stephen King isn't a billionaire because he wrote books. It's so much more than that. Like it's, writing books and making money off of books is not typically, it's, you got to be like a weird situation. Like, what is her name? Twilight author who just like
Stephanie
out of
Meyer.
nowhere, just like got a bunch of movie deals and whatever. So
Mhm.
anyway, point is I'm grateful for what I am building. And I think like I recognize very clearly without hesitation that the things that I do are only possible because of the people I surround myself with. Like I wouldn't be doing any of this if not for the people in my life that supported it. I think Kat and I were talking about this earlier, but when I first did finally like made the decision, or maybe it's in a group chat, finally made the decision to do a collection, it was because of my partner being like, you really should do your own thing, because my story, There Is Only Us, got rejected, and it ended up being a very personal story, so the rejection hurt a lot more than they normally hurt. And so it was one of those things where we were talking about it, and she was just kind of like, well, you could do it in your own, and like you should do that, because I had mentioned like, oh, if it gets rejected, I'm just gonna do my own. Thinking in my head, there's no way I'm actually gonna do that. And so I would have never like finally pulled the trigger on making that decision if she hadn't nudged me and been like, no, like you should do this, and then just the constant support. So I appreciate you guys so much for that.
Yeah.
Being awesome and
too.
boosting everyone, and we do it because we love it.
Yeah.
How do you remember that? Did you go back and look? Are you cheating right now? Yeah. Yeah, it's important. I think the horror community is not where it needs to be in the positively. Thanks, Rob. You do too. You're a big part of that too. I know you don't do just horror, right? But you're a part of that community with us. I think the community as a whole is not the best at those things, right? But I think our little one inside the bigger community is what makes it so good, because when the numbers aren't there, the people are. And that has to matter more, and it does matter more. So I just needed the reminder today, because I still have to go to my real job tomorrow. Well,
yeah, it's thank you again. Talking about the community and stuff, it's got me all like, but it means a lot to be here, like for this project, and like here briefly hosting voices, because it has, and you've done a lot for me. You've helped a lot with me personally, but I always see you like lifting people up, and
yeah.
I'm glad that you feel as supported by the community as how much like support you put into the community, because it's just
Yeah.
all the time. You're doing stuff
Yeah.
for the indie horror
I'm
space.
literally a co-host of Voices because of how well Angel treats the community. Like I was having a rough time with the community at the, and she was like,
Yeah.
we work well together. Come on full time. And yeah,
Yeah.
literally. So, I owe so much to Angel, but you're a shining star in the
Aw.
horror community. And so we're all very proud of you.
Well, enough of that. Anyway. Yeah.
Anyway, by Deorum Abyssi. Like, it is
Yes.
fantastic.
Y'all, it's so
It's
hard to
out.
tell, like, but this cover in person, like,
That alone, get the book.
yes, because it's so stunning. Like, and I know like the cover people like ourselves, right? Like we know this, but there are covers that you see and you're like, in print, that's gonna be the shit. Like you just know. And this was that. I was like, that is gonna look so fucking dope in person. And then I got them and I was like, now, and Kat, we always talk about how I don't ever have bad experiences with Amazon. The printing inconsistencies on the colorations may be an issue for me because this one, no, my partner has a good one. This one's muted, but there's another version of this. I got 4 of these, and where this is like hyper pink. And all of this like blue kind of faded out coloration is very pink.
It comes
Yeah,
across in these
Amazon.
images here. You can see more popping of like the pink.
Yeah, but what in real life it's supposed to look like is it's supposed to be more muted.
Oh, it's supposed to be muted. Okay.
Yeah, so this is more muted. This has like what I would consider like a blue or maybe a green casting over it, if that makes sense. But the other ones are like pink. And so and this just looks cooler. This is more gritty in my opinion. People who buy it won't even notice the difference, I'm sure, but I noticed. I was looking at it, I'm like, why is this one pink and this one's not? What is going on here? But anyway.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like at conventions and stuff, it's always like when they're sitting next to each other, you're like, oh no, they're going to see that Amazon doesn't know how to print books. But then like they take home a copy, there's nothing to compare it to.
Yeah, they don't
It's
know.
fine. Or like you order it online even and you never see any other point of reference.
No, for sure. Yeah, it'll be
But
fine.
it's gonna be
I'm not
okay.
worried about it in that regard.
Danny, say goodbye to everybody.
Oh.
Ah.
Bye, Danny. Rob says, even in just a small corner, it's the best place to be because of the positivity. Hey, I'll take small and positive over whatever else is going on. And Chris, I can't wait until it's on my bookshelf. Yeah, you have one coming, my friend. Don't worry. I'm in the process. It's very pink though. But it still looks good. It still looks good. It's just that it's pink. And so, or pinker, if that's such a thing. But you have one coming for all the beta reading. Because again, I really appreciate it. Chris, you were very pivotal in how this book turned out because of your feedback and your questions and your thoughts. And it affected a lot more of the storytelling than you probably realized. So just a very small way to say thank you. I'm sending you a copy in the mail. But anyway, go buy my book.
Yeah, go buy the book.
If you've read it, go review it. Or when you read it, go review it.
Yes, when, not if. And also, yeah, I'm gonna start bullying people again. What are you doing watching this? Go buy the book. You can watch this only if the book is already on its way to your house.
Or is on your Kindle. We will also accept.
Yes, we accept e-readers.
Yes. E-readers are allowed.
Also welcome.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we're not kicking you
Good.
out.
Yeah, you're okay.
I
Okay,
can't wait to hear your thoughts, Robert. Hopefully it's a really fun read. Hopefully you enjoy it.
Oh, don't want to miss Chris's laugh.
Oh, Marcy hasn't finished it. Oh, Chris, you got to let me know what she thinks when she gets to the twist and stuff at the end. You got to let me know, especially because she's been reading it from the beginning. Cool. Well, yay, launch day.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Do we put a link? I probably should have checked it. Did we make sure to put a link on?
I didn't have one when I made this. We'll edit it.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll put
It's
it
all
in.
over social media, folks. I've been posting about that shit all day. So, yeah, I can't remember. If there is a link, it's the pre-order, but I think it still takes you to the same place. I don't remember. I have no idea. I think.
Yeah, I can't
I
put
was
it in
gonna
chat now
check,
because that's
but
going to go away as soon as it's
I'm
over.
too slow. So
yeah. But if there isn't, we'll add it. We can add it post when it's done.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can edit the description after the fact. So we'll add it if it's not. I feel like I would have at least added the pre-order link, but I don't remember. I did a bunch of the live things at one time, and who knows? Honestly, if there's anything there at all, that's good.
I'm going to drop it in the comment section. Oh, wait, I think it broke into 2 comments. I don't know if it works.
oh no.
Jesus.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I think yeah, if it's not there, we'll do we can just post it, or we'll add it to the here you go. I got you. Copy link. Here, I did a tiny link.
Oh, so did I.
Oh, there you go. Either way, whichever one you want to use.
Just a wall of text in the comments. Sorry.
Crazy. Anyway. Well.
All right. I don't know how you guys usually do closing out statements, but I'm gonna let Danny do it and just like thank you all for coming to the live stream. Thank you for buying Angel's book, which I know you did already, so I don't have to bully you.
Yes, she'll be in the DMs.
My cat is half asleep.
Jenny is so comfy cozy right now.
He's like,
she's like, I was a menace all the way through the live stream, knocking stuff over in the back, hitting you with my tail. Now I can go to sleep. Now that it's like winding down.
oh.
Aw.
Yeah, we're talking about you.
Yes, thanks again to everybody in the chat. That was a good, I appreciate everybody that showed up, and like I said, people who supported me through the project, who boosted today and helped celebrate. It's a big deal. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, buy the book. And
you've got 3 links to choose from.
3 links to choose from. And yeah. Be sure to check, I don't know where I'm going. I'm like
and subscribe to Voices if you haven't already.
Yes.
Yes. We're going to be doing a 1,000 giveaway.
Just hit 1,000.
Oh yeah, we are. We're going to be doing 1,000 subscribers giveaway, and Kat's actually graciously. Speaking of people who can be, I can also be a bully. Kat's going to give us a signed copy of one of her books to include in that, as well as Radar Board is going to do.
It's a mystery.
Yeah. Hey, it doesn't matter. Just pick one. They're all good. And so Radar's going to donate one as well, but we're going to have a bunch of just random horror things kind of put together to make a big little package for whoever wins our giveaway whenever we're done sorting it. Because 1,000 is a big deal.
It's a big deal. Huge milestone.
Yeah. Now we just need all 1,000 of you to watch all of the videos from start to finish.
Just put it on the background, marathon it so we
hey,
can watch
that's what I do. You think I don't watch our stuff? You're crazy. I always do. I watch it from a different account though, so it counts. You got to.
No, I got my account. I got my son's account. Well, I guess it's technically under my account. It's just the child version, so I don't even be allowed to watch it. I think it's just all Miss Rachel and Blippi.
Well, cool. Steve, I'll let you close out because I'm not listening.
Well, we love you all. Be sure to continue supporting and sending love Angel's way, sending love our way, Cat's way, all the love.
Everybody's ways.
We got a lot of lives coming up too, so be sure to check out the schedule. I don't know off the top of my head, but we got a lot coming your way.
We have 2 more launch lives. We're doing Catherine Silva's Dead Folk. We're doing that on launch day on the 28th. September 9th, we're doing the Howlin' For You live. And then we have our AMA at the 1st of September as well. Ask us anything.
So. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for checking us out, and have a good rest of your night, your Monday night, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.